This will be another one of my stories from the ride videos, which have turned into somewhat of a video log for my channel. And this one's about riding in the heat. So I've had a few instances in the past few weeks that have reminded me how cautious we need to be when riding in the heat. The first was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I did a lunchtime ride and the heat just really set in then. And what happens here in north central Florida is the humidity just kicks in and it really kicks up the heat index. And I've been riding in Florida for, gosh, over 20 years now. And every summer when the heat kicks in, it just takes time to adjust to it. So I did a lunchtime ride and I hadn't done a time trial in a while. And I did one of my popular loops just for training, just to kind of see how it went. And I pushed it pretty hard for about 15 minutes, and I had warmed up for about 15 minutes and then pushed it really hard for 15 minutes. And when I was done with the effort, I was just toasted. And when you mountain bike, you don't have as much wind on you, and the humidity in the woods where we're at, if we get rain, the humidity is actually higher. So the heat index that day was about 105. And I would say it was probably 108, 110 in the woods just because the humidity is higher. Now it wasn't the shade, but when I was finished with that effort, I was just, like I said, toasted, and I just couldn't push the rest of the ride. I felt weak. I felt a little nauseous. And so that ride was about an hour in total. Got back to my office, showered, and just felt off the rest of the day. And that night I had a headache when I was trying to sleep, and I hardly ever get headaches. And even the next day, I just didn't feel myself. But a couple days later, I was out riding again pretty hard and didn't have as much of an issue. So it does take time to adjust to ride in the heat. The other incident just happened last week, and some of y'all may have heard about this. The lady in Arizona, in Phoenix, a 28-year-old fitness instructor. They said she was in good shape. Was out riding with some friends, and she was, I think they said it was about a 2 or 3 hour ride, and they started in the morning. I think they started around 7, and about a mile from the trailhead she just said she couldn't go on and collapsed, lost her pulse, and they couldn't revive her, and she passed away. So, you know, riding in Phoenix is serious business in the summer. I've ridden out there in November and it was great, but I would never want to ride out there in the summer. Because, you know, there's very little trees, very little shade, so I can only imagine with the heat so high and then the sun baking you, I can only imagine how hot it was. So that's, I mean, gosh, can you imagine that? You know, you're in shape, you just head out for a fun ride before work or whatever, before you start your day, and it's over. I mean, that sucks, majorly sucks. But again, it shows you how cautious you have to be riding in the heat. So I want to take the rest of this video and just share some tips for riding in the heat, because all of us are going to ride in extreme heat eventually. You know, you get heat waves where you live, or you may live in an area like I live where the heat index is pretty high consistently throughout the summer. So over the years I've learned some tips about riding in the heat, and I kind of want to share those in this video. The first thing, like I said, ease into it. Your body has to adjust. Now the good thing about riding in the heat that I've read this, that it's similar to training at altitude. Your body has to work harder than it would normally work, and so you can really increase your fitness, but you got to be careful and you got to ease into it. So it's almost like acclimatizing. You don't want to just the first really hot day you ride just go out and push it like I did. I mean, you figure I've been riding for so long in this area to be used to it, but man, it's like every summer I got to ease into it. So that's one tip. The other one is about hydration. So hydration obviously is very, very important, but hydration doesn't just occur the day of a ride. So you can't just chug a bunch of water to get hydrated right before you head out the door. And you especially can't go out drinking the night before and get dehydrated and then try to ride hard in the heat the next morning. It's just not wise. Hydration is something you got to do consistently. I have about a 16-ounce bottle that I keep with me all the time, and I'm sipping that thing all day long. And so, you know, especially if I have a really hot, long ride coming up, a couple days before it really hit the hydration. Now, don't go crazy on hydration if you're not doing electrolytes, because there's something called hyponatremia, and that is where you actually consume too much water and your cells will swell and actually you can die from it. In fact, I read about a high school football player a year or two ago who was just chugging water, and the dude died. He got hyponatremia and passed away. So if you're going to drink a lot of water, you got to get electrolytes, and I'll talk about electrolytes here in a couple minutes. And you know, when I ride in the summertime, I'll go through a bottle about every 45 minutes. Today I did a really long gravel ride. I did 101 miles of gravel, and I started at 6:45. By the time I got done, about 1 o'clock, the heat index was about 100. I think it was about 100, and so it was just hot. But I went through 8 water bottles on that ride. So you know, and just a tip, there's an app my daughter uses. I don't use it. It's called HydroCoach, and it just kind of coaches you to drink water at a certain time, so you can check out something like that. And so that's hydration. Now, and electrolytes are very important, like I said, and I'm gonna show you what I use for long rides. So these are Endurolites. Some of y'all use these, I'm sure, and have heard of them. They're made by Hammer Nutrition. I really like Heed, by the way, too, for my electrolyte drink. And so when you ride in the heat, you gotta have electrolytes. You cannot do just water. You will not feel good, and worse, you can drink too much water and flush out your electrolytes and lead to the hyponatremia that I talked about. So these are little pills, and I usually do about 2 of these every hour on a hot ride. I take a couple before the ride and a couple after. I used to get headaches after long hot rides before I started really hitting the electrolytes. That doesn't happen much anymore. And so electrolytes are very, very important. And again, you know, electrolyte drink or bananas. Just don't do pure water. The other thing is, if your stomach can't handle solid food on a long hot ride, a lot of people have stomach problems just because it's so hot. You may want to use gels because those get metabolized quickly, because on a long ride you have to have carbs. After an hour and a half, you got to start eating carbs. Otherwise you're going to bonk later on in the ride. The other thing that I want to mention that's nice about the Endurolites is a lot of times when I stop and fill up on a long like gravel ride, I'll just go into a convenience store and either buy like a gallon of water or just use the water at where the fountain drinks are. And so I don't buy like Gatorade or something like that. I can't do Gatorade. Gatorade messes up my stomach, which is hard for me to say because I went to the university where Gatorade was invented, but I can't do this stuff. It makes me nauseous. So the Endurolites are nice because you can get your electrolytes just by getting water like at a convenience store. The other thing that I do, and I know this is a fashion faux pas to wear a visor helmet on a road, but when I'm doing long gravel rides, you know, my gravel rides are on road and gravel road. I try to hit as many gravel segments as I can, but I like keeping the sun out of my face. So when the sun's overhead and just beating down on you, it's really nice to have a visor to block the sun from your nose and your face. And I actually will use just a regular non-visor helmet for my mountain bike rides because those are in the woods, and I don't like the way the visor obstructs my view on a cross-country ride. But for my long gravel rides, I like the helmet with a visor. The other thing that you can do is get one of these cycling caps and wear it with a regular helmet, and it looks a little bit cooler if you are a roadie. And I like them okay, but for longer rides, it's a little bit too much pressure with the hat and my helmet. Also, the visor hangs down pretty low and it obstructs my view. You really got to hold your head up. So I don't really use this too much, but this is an option too to keep the sun off your face. Now, of course, I do wear sunscreen on my face and on my arms, but this is my other tip here, I use these DeSoto arm coolers, skin coolers. And some of you may use these or have seen these. These are really neat. What they do, there's a couple things that they do. One is they just keep the sun from just cooking your skin and baking your skin. They do block UVB rays. Unfortunately, they don't block the UVA rays, which can be the damaging ones that cause like skin cancer. So I have to wear a little bit of sunscreen underneath these on my arms because my arms are just really exposed. But I really like these. The other thing that these do is they actually keep your skin cooler, because when you sweat, they get wet and your skin actually feels cooler than if you didn't have these on at all. And also what you can do is, once they're on, is wet them and you'll get even cooler. So I mentioned today that I stopped at a convenience store and I bought a gallon of water and had some left over, so I just poured it on my head and then I wet these, and I felt really cool when I started, and then it'll evaporate after half an hour, and then you got to rely on your sweat to keep them wet and cool. But these are really nice, and I would really recommend these, especially the arm ones. I've used the arm ones for years, and just yesterday, literally yesterday, I got the leg ones. Now, this is another thing that doesn't really look that cool. I put it off for years, but I don't like wearing a lot of sunscreen, and I didn't wear sunscreen with these on my legs. If I put a lot of sunscreen on, it actually makes me a little nauseous. You know, it's a chemical in your skin, it gets absorbed, so I don't know if there's like a little allergy or something to sunscreen, but I try not to just massively coat on the sunscreen. But I use the leg ones too. Again, these don't look great, but they work. In fact, I did shoot a little video when I was riding to show what these look like, so let me show that to you. So here's what it looks like with the leg coolers and the arm coolers, and of course the visor helmet. Another tip, and I'm sure most of y'all know this, and this isn't really about staying cool, but it's about protecting your phone. If you're sweating a lot when it's hot, I put my phone in a Ziploc bag, or this is an official cycling cell phone bag. I got this at a race, and this thing is really cool. It says Shimano. It's made by Jersey Ben, is what it says on it, but it's really heavy duty, and it's got a heavy duty Ziploc enclosure. You can drop your phone in water with this thing, so if you ever get caught in the rain or you're sweating a lot, you know, it's good to have your phone. And one time I used to carry my phone like a plastic grocery bag and I got caught in a downpour and it ruined the phone. So you want a Ziploc enclosure to completely seal off your phone from rain, and protecting it from sweat's a good idea too. So cycling is about pushing yourself. It's about finding where your limits are. When riding in the heat, you really want to know when you start to hit those limits of riding in the heat. Like the girl I mentioned before, I'm sure that she started feeling bad long before she collapsed. So if you start to feel bad on a ride, and these by the way are the symptoms of heat exhaustion, which is the step before heat stroke, but confusion, dizziness, fainting, fatigue, headache, muscle and abdominal cramps, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, pale skin, profuse sweating, rapid heartbeat. So if you start to feel those symptoms, especially like I felt, you know, I felt weak and nauseous on my ride, and I knew I had to back it down. And if you start to feel like that, sometimes it's best to not stop, but just really pedal slow, because you want to keep the wind on you. If you completely stop, the wind's not going to be on you, and you can really get hot. So when pushing the limits, know where those are with riding in the heat, and be cautious about it. You know, live to ride another day. I know that sounds crazy, but seriously, I mean, that girl, passed away just doing something she loved. And like I said, you know, she was a fitness instructor, and they said that she actually was prepared, which I assume she had the water and whatever, and she was riding in a group, riding with people, but man, sucks. So know what the limits are. Don't push them when riding in the heat. Be careful. So there you go. Those are my tips from someone who rides in the heat a lot. You know, just be careful out there. If you have any stories related to this, riding in the heat or whatever, leave them below. And if this type of video was helpful for you, just give it a thumbs up for me. Thanks for watching.